"Sir, you need to stand up immediately." The flight attendant's voice cut through the first-class cabin, sharp and public. "If you don't comply, security will remove you from this aircraft." The man didn't raise his voice, didn't argue, didn't panic. "I'm sitting in the seat printed on my ticket," he said calmly. "It's right here." What no one on that plane knew yet was that, in just a few minutes, everything would change. And 3 careers would be over. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from. And if you believe paying for first class shouldn't turn into public humiliation, like the video and subscribe. Marcus Hale boarded Flight 618 from Chicago to New York at 6:40 a.m. He was 41 years old, quiet and professional. Dressed in dark slacks and a navy jacket, carrying a slim black laptop bag. Nothing flashy, nothing loud. He placed the bag in the overhead bin and sat in seat 2A, first class. Marcus had paid $1,380 for that seat with his own credit card. He always did. Not for comfort, for privacy. Inside his bag was a secured laptop containing sensitive federal briefings, documents he reviewed during travel, away from wandering eyes. Marcus opened his tablet and began reading. He didn't look around. Experience had taught him that existing quietly was safer. At 7:12 a.m., flight attendant Emily Parker began her walkthrough of the first-class cabin. She worked for the airline for 6 years and knew the routine well. Executives, frequent flyers, familiar faces. Then she stopped. Row 2. Her eyes narrowed. A black man casually dressed, reading. She stepped closer. "Sir," she said sharply, arms crossed, "may I see your boarding pass?" Marcus looked up, surprised but composed. "Is there a problem? I need to verify you're in the correct seat." Other passengers glanced over. Marcus reached into the seat pocket and handed her his boarding pass. Emily studied it longer than necessary. She flipped it, held it to the light, checked the barcode again. Seat 2A, first class, paid ticket. Still, she didn't hand it back. "Did you pay for this seat?" she asked. The cabin grew quiet. "Yes," Marcus replied evenly. "I purchased it." Emily's lips pressed thin. "First class is very expensive," she said. "Sometimes there are booking errors." "There isn't one," Marcus said. "I'm in my assigned seat." Emily stared at him, searching for something, anything, that justified her discomfort. Then she turned away. "I'm going to verify this with the gate," she said. "Please remain seated." She walked off, still holding his boarding pass. From the front galley, Emily picked up the intercom phone. "I have a passenger in first class that needs to be checked," she said. The gate agent hesitated. "Is there an issue with the ticket?" "It doesn't look right," Emily replied. "Send security." She hung up. Moments later, she returned. "Security is coming to verify your ticket," she announced loudly. "For what reason?" Marcus asked. "You're holding proof that it's valid." She didn't answer. A woman across the aisle spoke up. "This is ridiculous. He showed you his ticket." Emily snapped back. "Ma'am, stay out of this." Phones came out. The plane door was still open. And a line had been crossed. Airport security officer Ryan Cole boarded moments later, his hand resting near his belt. Emily spoke first. "He's refusing to cooperate," she said, "and causing a disturbance." Ryan turned to Marcus, suspicion already set. "Why are you making this difficult?" he asked. Marcus stayed calm. "I'm not. I showed her my ticket. I'm in my assigned seat." Emily handed Ryan the boarding pass. He glanced at it for barely 2 seconds. Everything checked out. Still, he shrugged. "That doesn't give you the right to argue with crew." "I haven't argued," Marcus said. I've complied with every request. Ryan stepped closer. Stand up now. Passengers spoke up. He hasn't done anything. I'm recording. Ryan raised his voice. I didn't ask for passenger opinions. Emily folded her arms. He's been disruptive, she repeated. A lie. And everyone knew it. Captain Thomas Whitaker exited the cockpit. Emily spoke quickly. He's refusing crew instructions. The captain didn't ask Marcus a single question. Didn't ask for the boarding pass. Didn't listen to the passengers objecting. Sir, he said firmly, if my crew has asked you to deplane, you need to comply. Marcus felt something go cold. On what grounds, he asked. I've broken no rules. Failure to comply, the captain replied. The businessman in seat 1A stood up. This is discrimination, he said. We all saw it. More voices joined. Phones recording from every angle. Silence fell. Marcus reached up and pulled his bag from the overhead bin. Ryan tensed. Marcus opened it and pulled out a badge. I'm Special Agent Daniel Cross, Marcus said clearly. Federal Bureau of Investigation. The badge caught the cabin light. Emily's face drained of color. Ryan stepped back. The captain froze. I paid for this seat, Marcus continued. I followed every rule, and I was targeted because of how I look. No one spoke. Phones kept recording. This, Marcus said calmly, will be addressed. The flight was delayed. But the damage was already done. Because by the time they landed, the internet would see everything. And nothing would ever be the same again. If he hadn't pulled out that badge, do you think anyone would have stopped them? The plane eventually took off. But by the time the wheels left the runway, everything had already changed. Emily Parker sat rigid in the jump seat near the rear of the aircraft, her hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles were white. She hadn't spoken since being quietly told to remain in the back for the duration of the flight. Ryan Cole stayed behind at the gate, replaying the moment the badge appeared over and over in his head. Captain Thomas Whitaker flew the plane in near silence, his confidence replaced with a growing sense of dread. And Marcus Hale sat back in seat 2A, calm and still, as phones lit up around him. Because the internet had already gotten involved. Before the plane reached cruising altitude, multiple videos had been uploaded. Different angles. Clear audio. No missing context. One showed Emily questioning only one passenger. Another showed Ryan threatening removal, despite a valid ticket. A third captured the exact moment Marcus revealed his credentials, and the entire cabin fell silent. By the time the flight landed in New York, the first video had passed 2 million views. By midnight, it had crossed 17 million. And it wasn't slowing down. The airline released a statement later that evening. They said they were aware of the incident and were reviewing the matter internally. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. The comments were unforgiving. People demanded answers. Sponsors started asking questions. And the stock dipped before markets even closed. Marcus said nothing. The next morning, airline executives gathered in an emergency meeting. Legal teams replayed the footage frame by frame. Every pause, every lie, every ignored witness. One attorney finally said what everyone else was thinking. This isn't a public relations issue. This is a federal lawsuit. Because Marcus Hale wasn't just any passenger. He was a federal agent. And he had evidence. 3 days later, Emily Parker was called into a conference room. Human Resources. Legal counsel. No union representative. They didn't ask her what happened. They showed her the videos. Then the flight logs. Then a report showing she hadn't questioned a single white passenger in first class that morning. Her explanation didn't matter. She was terminated before the end of the day. Ryan Cole was next. His incident report claimed the passenger was aggressive and uncooperative. The video showed none of it. He was suspended pending investigation. He never returned. Captain Whitaker lasted longer than the others, until Marcus filed his complaint. The lawsuit hit the news early the following week. A federal agent was suing the airline for racial discrimination, false accusation, and abuse of authority. The amount listed shocked everyone. $1.3 million. But the money wasn't the real threat. Discovery was. Internal emails surfaced. Training documents showed inconsistent enforcement. Prior complaints followed the same pattern: quiet settlements, no admissions, no change. Then one internal message went public. Use discretion in premium cabins. Certain passengers raise red flags. That single sentence went viral. Deposition clips followed. Emily Parker admitted she had a feeling something was off. Ryan Cole admitted he trusted the crew's judgment. Captain Whitaker admitted he didn't feel verification was necessary. None of them could explain why. The airline settled quickly. Quietly, the payout stayed the same, but the conditions expanded. Mandatory bias training across the company. Revised security escalation policies. A public apology issued by the CEO. 3 personnel files permanently marked. Captain Whitaker retired early. His farewell flight was quietly canceled. Marcus Hale declined interviews, except for one short statement. This wasn't about a seat, he said. It was about who is presumed guilty and who is presumed to belong. Then he returned to work. The videos are still online. The comments are still arguing. And Flight 618 is still referenced inside the airline as the incident. If there had been no cameras, no witnesses, no badge, how many times do you think this has already happened? There was one passenger who hadn't said anything. She sat in seat 3C, close enough to hear everything, close enough to see every expression. Her name was Lauren Mitchell, and she would think about that flight for a long time. Lauren noticed the shift before anyone raised their voice. The tone, the pause, the way the flight attendant's posture changed only when she stopped at seat 2A. Lauren flew first class often. Boarding passes were scanned at the gate. Seat checks like that almost never happened. But this time they did. And only to one person. Lauren watched Marcus hand over his ticket. Watched it be examined longer than necessary. Watched suspicion replace professionalism. A thought crossed her mind that made her uncomfortable. This wouldn't be happening if he looked like me. She almost spoke up. Almost. But fear has a quiet way of convincing people to stay still. She didn't want attention. Didn't want to miss her flight. Didn't want to be pulled into something she couldn't control. So she told herself someone else would say something. And she stayed silent. When security arrived, Lauren's heart started pounding. She saw the way the officer stood too close. The way his voice hardened without cause. She lifted her phone. Not to post. Just in case. When the captain arrived and sided with the crew without asking questions, Lauren felt a knot form in her stomach. This wasn't confusion. This was certainty. And then Marcus reached into his bag. When the badge appeared, relief washed through the cabin. But Lauren didn't feel relief. She felt shame. Because the truth was obvious now. If Marcus hadn't had that badge, no one would have stopped them. The flight ended, Life moved on, and Lauren told herself she'd done nothing wrong. She had the video, but the internet already had dozens. Her footage didn't matter, she thought. So she saved it. 2 weeks later, an email arrived from the airline. A polite message. Routine language. Then one line that made her stop breathing. If you witnessed any misconduct on Flight 618, we encourage you to contact our legal department. Not accountability. Damage control. That night, Lauren watched her video again. This time, she wasn't focused on Marcus. She was listening. In the background, just before security arrived, another crew member leaned toward Emily Parker. The audio was faint, but clear. He doesn't look like a first-class regular. Lauren replayed it. Again. And again. Her hands started shaking. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was intent. The next morning, Lauren contacted the attorney listed in the news coverage. She didn't ask for anonymity. She sent the video. The response came quickly. That single sentence changed everything, because it proved the assumption wasn't accidental. And intent turns embarrassment into liability. The airline tried to suppress the clip. It failed. The phrase spread everywhere. Doesn't look like a first-class regular. Sponsors quietly pulled out. Journalists dug deeper. And a second internal review was launched behind closed doors. 6 months later, the airline updated its training manual. No announcement. No press release. Just one quiet change. A sentence was removed. Another was added. Seat class does not imply passenger profile. Lauren posted her video that night. No caption. No explanation. Just the footage. It passed 8 million views in a day. In a follow-up post, she wrote one sentence. Silence helps the wrong people sleep at night. Marcus Hale returned to work. Lauren changed how she travels. And passengers everywhere started watching more closely. Because now they knew. Sometimes the most important witness is the one who stayed quiet the longest. If you had been in that seat, would you have spoken up sooner? The airline hoped the story would fade. It didn't. Because 3 months after Flight 618, it happened again. Different city. Different crew. Same airline. Flight 902 was scheduled to depart from Los Angeles to Boston just after sunrise. First class was half full. Among the passengers was Anthony Brooks, a 38-year-old corporate attorney traveling for a deposition. Seat 1C. Paid confirmed window. Anthony boarded early, placed his briefcase in the overhead bin, and sat down. He opened his laptop and began reviewing notes. Nothing unusual. Until the walkthrough began. Flight attendant Rachel Donovan slowed as she reached row 1. She glanced at Anthony. Then glanced again. Her smile faded. "Sir," she said politely but firm, "may I see your boarding pass?" Anthony paused. "Sure," he replied, handing it to her. She scanned it. Everything matched. But she didn't hand it back. "Are you sure you're in the correct cabin?" she asked. Anthony felt the shift immediately. "I'm in the seat printed on my ticket," he said. "Is there a problem?" Rachel hesitated. "First-class passengers usually board earlier," she said. Anthony stared at her. "I boarded when my group was called." A passenger across the aisle looked up. Anthony remembered the videos. Flight 618. The badge. The fallout. This didn't feel random. "Is there a reason you're questioning me?" he asked calmly. Rachel straightened. "I'm just following protocol." "What protocol?" Anthony asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and walked toward the galley, still holding his boarding pass. Anthony stood. Not aggressively. Deliberately. "Excuse me," he said, loud enough for the cabin to hear. "I'd like my boarding pass back." Heads turned. Phones stayed down, but attention locked in. Rachel froze. "I'm verifying something," she said. "With whom?" Anthony asked. Silence. Then a man across the aisle spoke up. "He showed you his ticket. What's the issue?" Another voice followed. "This looks familiar." Rachel's face flushed. She looked around the cabin, then back at Anthony. She handed the boarding pass back. "No problem," she said quickly. "You're all set." Too late. The captain arrived moments later. "What's going on?" he asked. Anthony explained exactly what happened, calm, precise. The captain listened without interrupting. Then he turned to the flight attendant. "Was there a system error?" "No," Rachel admitted. "Then why was his ticket questioned?" She didn't answer. The captain nodded once. "Understood." He turned to the cabin. "Thank you for your patience." Then quietly to Rachel, "Step into the galley." The flight departed on time. Anthony stayed seated. But the moment didn't disappear. 3 passengers uploaded clips before takeoff. One caption read, "Another one almost happened." The comments filled instantly. Same airline. Same pattern. They only stopped because people were watching. Journalists noticed. A transportation reporter connected the dots. Same airline. Multiple incidents. Same language. An internal employee reached out anonymously. What they leaked confirmed everything. An internal memo circulated among crews read, "Premium cabins attract fraudulent upgrades. Use discretion when passengers don't fit typical profiles." Typical profiles. The phrase exploded online. Sponsors quietly pulled ads. Lawmakers asked questions. The airline's CEO was called before a federal oversight panel. One question stopped the hearing cold. "How do your employees decide who fits in first class?" There was no answer. Only silence. Flight 618 was no longer an isolated incident. Flight 902 proved it. Passengers began recognizing the signs. The extra stare. The unnecessary question. The walk to the galley. But now people were ready. Phones came out faster. Silence didn't feel safe anymore. And the airline realized too late that cameras had changed everything. If no one had been watching that morning, how do you think Flight 902 would have ended? The airline thought the worst was over. The lawsuits had been settled. The statements had been issued. The executives had testified. On paper, the crisis was closed. But for Marcus Hale it was. Because 6 months after Flight 618, he was asked a question he hadn't expected. "Can you help us prevent the next one?" The request didn't come from the airline. It came from the government. Marcus sat in a quiet conference room in Washington, D.C., watching clips from incidents that never went viral. No phones. No witnesses. No headlines. Just reports. A man asked to move temporarily from first class. A woman questioned repeatedly about her upgrade. A couple quietly rebooked after being told there was a system issue. Different flights. Different cities. Same pattern. Most people complied. Most people didn't record. Most people disappeared from the story. Marcus closed the folder. "This isn't about policy," he said. "It's about assumptions." The room stayed silent. Weeks later, a pilot program was announced. No press conference. No marketing. Just a quiet change rolled out across multiple airlines. Crew were required to log every seat challenge, every verification, every escalation. Not just the outcome, the reason. At first, nothing happened. Then patterns emerged. Certain flights, certain routes, certain passengers questioned more than others. Data did what apologies never could. It exposed behavior. Inside the airline, some employees pushed back. They said it made their jobs harder, that it slowed boarding, that it questioned their judgment. But the logs didn't lie, and neither did the numbers. Challenges dropped, confrontations decreased, and incidents like Flight 618 stopped appearing altogether. Not because people changed overnight, but because silence was no longer an option. Marcus never became a spokesperson. He never wrote a book. He didn't want recognition. But sometimes on flights, he noticed something different. When a flight attendant approached a passenger now, their tone was careful, professional, measured. And when someone reached for their phone, it wasn't out of fear. It was habit. The system hadn't become perfect, but it had become visible. And visibility changes behavior. Months later, Marcus boarded another flight. Different airline, different city, first class, seat 2A. A flight attendant paused when she reached him. She smiled. "Welcome aboard," she said, and kept walking. Marcus sat back, opened his tablet, and for the first time in a long while, he felt invisible again. The way it should have been all along. Because the real change wasn't the lawsuit, or the settlement, or the firings. It was the fact that now everyone knew. If you were watching closely, what do you think actually changed?